Aloha and welcome to the Bear Woznick adventure. My heart is just really full of joy today because I get to be with one of my favorite people in the world. We have as our guest today Jason Jones. We always ask people, should we have more Jason Jones? And they all write back to us, more cowbell. So we got Jason Jones in the house. We're going to talk about all of his adventures in the Middle East. He's particularly in the Gaza area, and he's got 2 new films coming out. So we'll be right back with the Bear Woznick adventure starring Jason Jones. Be right back.
Welcome to the Bear Woznick adventure. Kickstart that engine and roll thunder with the pack. Explore the grittiness of manly spirituality. Gain traction in the virtues. Soup up your spiritual engine by turning adversity into adventure. Now here's Bear Woznick. Let's ride.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick adventure. I was thinking about this today at Mass. Maybe you can't tell, I've got my Lenten ashes on. Today we're having the big meetup with the man cave. We're going to have our monthly, Zoom. Well, it's not Zoom, but it's a Zoom type meetup with the man cave. But I was thinking about this today, how, a surfer out in the lineup, when you're surfing, you can feel the difference when the tide changes from a tide that's going out to a tide that's coming in, because the tide as it goes out takes a little energy out of the wave, but when it starts to push in, you can feel a little. It doesn't cause waves, but you can just feel there's a releasing of energy and even an empowering a little bit in the wave. I felt that particularly once, a couple of times actually, when I got to surf tsunamis. Tsunamis, the tide goes out in about 20 minutes and then comes back. So in about a 40-minute cycle instead of a 12-hour cycle. And you could feel the tide going out and then way out. And then you would feel the surge of it coming in. And a surfer sits in the lineup, especially on a big day. You can see a wave coming. I mean, on a real big day. You can sometimes see the horizon way out on the horizon, miles away. You can see it rising up on the horizon. Minutes, sometimes 6-7 minutes away, you can see a big wave, a big set coming. That's why I feel it is in the world today, that the tide's gone out, but there's been a turning in the tide, and there's a big swell coming, and there's a change. And I think it's a time in our world and in our lives, especially for men, that we need to be alert for the signs of the times and how we should respond to them. A surfer, when he sees a big set coming, he will paddle out, not just out, but he tends to know, okay, if it's coming, the wave's coming from that direction, it'll hit that reef. It might pop up over here on the left, but it's going to actually break up over here on the right as it passes, from the deeper water. And he paddles to meet that wave. And I feel like we have a man in our as our guest today, Jason Jones, who is always paddling to meet that next wave. He sees it. When you're in the lineup, there are some that see that set coming, that see that wave coming before others do, and suddenly they're paddling, and everyone else goes, "Oh, I better paddle out too." All of us men need to be like that. We need to be on the alert, and there's something new that is happening. I remember on the election, about 5 or 6 days before the election, I was walking down Kalakaua Avenue. And I said to my wife, Cindy, there's something happening in the air right now. My wife's walking by right now. Do you remember that, Cindy? So there's something going on in the air. There's a battle going on in the heavenlies right now. I can feel it. The angels, there's some big, bad bongo angels going after the demonic forces. And we need to pray. But there's a victory coming. There's a new wave coming. So in Hawaii, we have had almost 2 months with hardly any waves here in Waikiki. We've hardly had any waves. I've maybe caught 8 waves in the last 8 weeks. It's one of the flattest times I've ever experienced. But guess what? The spring season is coming, and then the summer swells will start. The big tropical storms will push 10, 15, 20-foot waves here into Waikiki. That's what I feel like. That's what I feel like the times we're in right now. We need to anticipate. Man, you need to think about, what is the calling God has in my life? What action plan does he have for me? How can I serve him? How can I be a prophet in these times and proclaim the gospel and make a change and have an impact on my world, on my family that will be eternal. And I'm saying all of that because I was reflecting at Mass this morning, that my good friend Jason Jones would be here. And he always seems like one of those guys that he sees that wave, that next wave of revival or what the Lord's up to. And he's always paddling out and showing us the way. So Jason Jones, my dear friend, man I deeply respect, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure starring Jason Jones.
Yeah. We joke a lot about that, Bear. Then I get emails that I'm rude to you. With yeah, welcome to my show, Bear Woznick. They're like, it was Bear's show. What were you talking about?
They were saying they were saying I'm so glad you were being rude to him. They weren't telling you not to be.
It was a work of mercy. I was instructing the ignorant. This is my show.
Yeah,
Bear Woznick. It's a privilege. I saw a meme the other day about like men. They can be best friends and brothers and like not talk for a year. And I think women have a hard time understanding this, but you are one of my best friends and my brothers, but we're all fighting our battles. And I feel like, I miss you so much since I moved to the mainland. We don't really get to talk a lot. I think half the time we talk, it's like I'm on your show.
It's the only reason I have you on, so I can catch up with you.
Yeah, really. No, it is. And so, but it's great for me to see you and talk with you.
I think you're somewhere in Washington, D.C. right now.
Yeah, I'm in Washington, D.C. I've been here for about a week.
What's going on?
It's torrential storm. I'm here. I've been here for a week. It's pretty intense. Working on different projects. My organization, the Vulnerable People Project, seeks to serve the most vulnerable people in the world that have been abandoned, that are facing genocide, democide, war. And so I've been here with a young woman, not so young, younger than me, who is going to be running for president of Ukraine. She's a business leader and a pro-life leader in Ukraine. And when they announce elections, which will probably be in May, she'll be running. So I've been working on the Ukraine issue. As you can imagine, what an exciting time to work on the Ukraine issue, this week especially.
Yeah.
Also, I've been here advocating for the civilians in Gaza and working on getting visas for the Afghan allies that my organization has been hiding in safe houses across Central Asia since the Joe Biden's ham-fisted and catastrophic withdrawal, which abandoned American SIV holders, those who were promised a visa in exchange for their service to the United States military or Western NGOs. And they knew that service would put their life and their family's life in jeopardy, so we would promise them a visa at the end of their service. When we withdrew, most of those 180,000 SIV holders were abandoned to their death by violence, death by poverty and exposure. And so I'm here for that as well. Yeah. So, can I address what you said in the beginning, Bear, which is the nature of my apostolate, which I think it's serving the vulnerable is a very Catholic apostolate. My main commitment has always been the child in the womb. I think that's the foundation in the United States and in the West for human rights work, because the greatest assault on human dignity in our place and in our time is denying the dignity of the child in the womb. In Hawaii, our state, denying now, can you imagine a state that has the most respect for the elderly, abandoning them to assisted suicide and euthanasia? That's been the foundation of my work. And I remember in the late 80s and early 90s as a pro-life activist, even in the Republican Party, that you were not a popular guy. We would always have battles on the platform committee. And then when I opposed the invasion of Iraq, I wasn't a popular guy. And now as you said, my writing partner, John Zmirak, said today he wakes up every day feeling like it's his birthday, seeing the news. My wife responded similarly to me in a text this morning after watching President Trump's address to the nation. But I think sadly with my apostolate, we stand at the edge of the abyss. We stand outside of the party. And we're looking to serve those who have been forgotten. And right now it's, the 2 million civilians in Gaza, 1.5 million civilians in Gaza that are left alive and starving. The Christians in the West Bank that are having their homes stolen by the state of Israel. Just this week, Israel robbed the Armenian Catholics of one of their ancient churches. The predominantly Catholic children in the Congo, who harvest cobalt for CCP-owned companies to sell.
CCP is China.
Yeah, to sell to Chinese. Chinese companies are working Congolese Catholic boys and girls to death to harvest cobalt that go for America, primarily electric cars. 80% of the world's cobalt goes to electric cars, and 80% of the world's cobalt comes from Congo. Ethically sourced cobalt can serve the needs for computers and phones. It's really this demand for electric cars that has led to like the exploitation of these Catholic boys and girls, the Uyghurs in China, and the civilians in Ukraine, people in Ukraine. So as excited as I am about so much, I feel with my apostolate, we're still always staring into the abyss. We're staring into war. We're staring into genocide. I just returned from the West Bank. My organization is, last week we distributed 8,000 hot meals to the Christian community.
We got to take a little bit of a break, Jason.
Sure.
When my wife and I, when we eat together and we're with Jason, she never sits between us because it's like two fire hydrants going off at the same time, communicating. We'll be right back with Jason Jones, and we'll talk story more about what he's up to with the Vulnerable People Project and his new films. We'll be right back with the Bear Woznick Adventure. SchoolofManliness.com is a place for men of grit and grace to join together, to inspire, to encourage, and to challenge each other to grow in manly virtue. Members receive morning man meditations, a monthly curriculum that is rich with audio, video, and written content, and a trail guide to help you map out your new trajectory. Many of our members lead their sons through this same curriculum. Your membership gives you access to both the Man Cave, which is our non-Facebook type community, and the School of Manliness at SchoolofManliness.com. Become a member at SchoolofManliness.com. Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick Adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick Adventure possible. My newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone?, has hit the top 5 in Christian books for a good reason. It's because men are searching for traction and a trail guide to live out the unique calling and the gifts that they were born with, that each man individually is factory loaded with by God. Paul said, "Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, do all things in love." Finally, here is a book that talks with men the way men talk with each other. Just plain old straight shoot. By the way, Mama Bears, this is your chance to get this message to your men. Go to SchoolofManliness.com or anywhere books are sold. 12 Rules for Manliness. Where have all the cowboys gone?
This is a warning. The Bear Woznick Adventure is dangerous. The radical change Bear challenges you to is not for wimps. Change this station now to a soft rock station before it's too late. You've been warned. Now, here is Bear Woznick.
Aloha, welcome to the Bear Woznick Adventure. You're not a member of the Man Cave. That means you can't join our meetup today. We're having a meetup about once a month. We have a Man Cave meetup. It's our own. It's not Zoom. We have our own private type Zoom capability within our Man Cave, our special website, and also available through our app that you can download. But we have men from around the world that will get together, and really of all ages. We've had a lot of young men join lately. It's interesting. We've had, Jason, you'll like this, we've had some bull riders joining us.
Amazing.
Yeah. I asked one of them, who's a Navy pilot, a Navy helicopter pilot. He's a surfer, a golfer, and a bull rider. I asked him, what's the hardest thing of all of those? And he said, golf, which I 100% agree with. But we want to invite you to go to schoolofmanliness.com, and become a member of the Man Cave. You'll learn we have a curriculum, a monthly type. We have one subject a month, but every week on a Saturday morning, we send you out that week's curriculum, so you can sit at the coffee shop or wherever you want to have an early morning time at home, and go through that curriculum. And men, your sons that are confirmation age or older can get their own free log on to the School of Manliness, and you can lead them through it. So it's a really powerful tool. We have Brad Rushmore has joined us. He's one of the bull riders. He's our ramrod for the School of Manliness and the Man Cave. He's the one that makes sure you get your curriculum and keeps the conversation in the Man Cave lively. Right now, he's posting challenges for the men because it's the Lenten season. Every week we post up a new challenge, and then you accept that challenge or not, and you post daily to let the men know that you're doing that. Right now, this week we're doing the 30-30-30, 30 minutes of cardio, 30 crunches, 30 push-ups, and 30 minutes of prayer. It's for the Lenten season. So join the Man Cave, the School of Manliness, at schoolofmanliness.com. Our guest today is Jason Jones, filmmaker, a man who's always on the front lines. I don't think you could be anywhere else. I remember I've never really seen you angry, Jason, but I remember once about 6 years ago, Jason, I'm a little bit concerned for your health. You need to slow down. And that made you really upset. You said no.
It's funny. I have a friend. I was going to Syria a couple weeks ago, and a friend of mine called me who's Syrian, a Christian from Syria. He's a great man. He was an Olympic wrestler. He actually represented Syria in the Olympics, was in the NFL for a while. He is a very manly dude.
Did you ever roll with him? Did you ever fight with him?
No, I rolled with his son. His son's 6'5" and a pro MMA fighter. And he has a boxing ring in a barn. He lives in Pennsylvania. And this guy's amazing. I'll send the show to him. But he has a boxing ring in his barn, and it was the ring that was the Thrilla in Manila ring.
But you got to give a shout out to him right now. What's his name?
Yeah, no, he might not.
You can't. Okay, all right.
But I'll send the show to him. He might not. He might not like it. But he's
Thrilla in Manila. Really? He's got that ring?
Yeah. He has the ring in the garage. Wow. Really neat guy. And I train with his son. He's my son does MMA. I'm like, I'd love to spar with him. And then this 6'5" NCAA wrestler enters the barn, and I'm like, what was I thinking?
Now, are you telling me that the Thrilla in Manila was staged just like the moon landing? It was actually in a barn in somewhere in the Midwest?
Somehow acquired the ring. But he's this unique guy. But I love him. But, he called me before I was entering, when I was landing, I was in Turkey or Jordan or something. And he was telling me not to go to Syria. And I hadn't answered his phone calls for weeks since then. And he called me yesterday. I finally answered it. Or a couple days ago, and I finally answered it. And I said, brother, why haven't you been answering my calls? I said, because you told me not to do my apostolate that God put on my heart. Never tell me not to do my job. My job comes with risks. You don't think I know that? Mm-hmm. If every time someone told me not to go to Sudan or Iraq or Afghanistan or Gaza or Syria, you think I would have done a single trip? Literally, if every time someone called me and said God put it on their heart that I shouldn't go, or that they had a dream that I was going to die, I get these calls every time, all the time. And it is something that upsets me, because I think that the Western church has an inordinate fear for our own physical security and a thoughtlessness of the persecuted church. And our brothers and sisters in Christ are being slaughtered around the world every single day. In India, in one state alone last year, 280 churches out of 320 churches were destroyed. 9 out of 10 Christians in the world martyred will be killed in Nigeria. 10% of the Christians in Gaza have been killed since the war started by the IDF. 90% of their buildings have been destroyed, and every church has been bombed in Israel, including a 2,000-pound bomb fell on the oldest continually inhabited church in Christendom that's been there since the 2nd century, St. Porphyus. So my brothers and sisters in Christ are suffering. I have an apostolate that serves the vulnerable, but not only Christians, the Yazidis, the Uyghur, and others. And so I don't know what you're talking about, but if you want to see me get mad, tell me. I don't remember.
We were paddling, I think, maybe it was in Florida, and you looked and you actually had you had a lung condition, a little bit of a lung condition that you weren't aware of at that point, and that
well, you know what's funny about that?
That didn't stop you.
I should have listened to you, Bear, because I almost died the next day. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could hardly paddle.
Yeah,
I thought what a wimp, you know.
I had exertional myelinosis the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up almost dying. My kidneys and liver were beginning to fail. Fortunately, I collapsed unconscious in a hotel, and I was speaking at Notre Dame. I'd flown from you to Chicago. I boxed like 10 rounds at a gym in Chicago after stand-up paddling with you that morning. And I went to Chicago, went to a boxing gym, then raced to Notre Dame to give a speech that evening, collapsed in the hotel. So I should have listened to you that day. I'm not saying people should never tell me to slow down. But as a rule, it's my pet peeve.
Well, you probably when you got out of the hospital, you probably called me angry already. Hey,
I was in the hospital
yeah,
it was horrible.
Yeah. Well, you know, you have a statement you make to your sons. I don't know how many of them are home anymore. You know, I knew them when they were little. I think your oldest maybe had just joined the military, but was about to, I think. But you have this prayer that you pray with them. I think you pray with the sons, and your wife prays with the girls. But it's to place yourselves between harm and the vulnerable. How is it that you say it?
Yeah, we ask God to place the Jones boys between the violent and the vulnerable, but to make sure that the Jones women will never see war or violence or displacement or hunger.
Can you take that and talk to the men today, the young men and the fathers, about taking that role as men? It's time for us to, men are understanding now again that it's time for manliness. The word man comes from the Latin word
I'm going to give you
virtue.
My whole postulate is based on my responsibility as a man, because I was a failure. I mean, I'm a big failure as a man in so many ways, but as a teenage boy, I'd got my high school girlfriend pregnant and joined the Army. And while I was in basic training, her father found out she was pregnant and beat her up and took her to get a forced abortion.
You joined the Army so you could support her and the child.
Yeah. So as soon as she told me she was pregnant, actually it was 2 days before my 17th birthday, I went down to the recruiter on my birthday, and they had a program for troubled youth. And I was almost overqualified, unfortunately, for the program. I was so troubled, but ended up shortly thereafter going to Fort Benning, Georgia, into basic training AIT. And while I was in AIT, her father took her to get a forced third trimester abortion, infantry training, basic infantry training.
Her good Catholic father.
Very famous, prominent Catholic father, yeah. And that kind of led to my anti-Catholic prejudice, which is a whole other story. But it was from that and some experiences as a soldier that I just really wanted to order my life to help men that were in impossible situations stand with their family. And that's why, whether it's abortion or genocide, democide, war. And so I'm going to challenge your audience, because I bet you half of your audience is out to lunch on a very important issue. So I want to challenge the men. And I think of the half of the audience is out to lunch, they've been so thoroughly indoctrinated and will be so offended by what I say, maybe only 10% will open their mind. In our country, we have been so inculcated an anti-Arab prejudice and this despicable apostasy, which is Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism goes counter to everything the Catholic Church teaches about the mystical body of Christ and Jesus Christ fulfilling all of the promises to Abraham. This idea that the state of Israel is God's will is not what the church teaches. Now, I believe there should be a homeland for the Jews. I think history has demonstrated this as a necessity, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to promulgate a heresy, which is Christian Zionism, which is a heresy less than 200 years old. But beyond that, if you want to have courage as a Catholic man, there's no more privileged, no more influential Catholic in the world than the American Catholic man, period. Middle class, I'm a middle class.
Let's take a break, because we're going to really turn our focus to that, okay, when we come back. Okay. Talking with Jason Jones. He's today he happens to be in Washington, D.C. Actually lives in Texas, but formerly here in Hawaii. That's how we became good friends. We'll be right back with more of the Bear Woznick adventure. Go to schoolofmanliness.com and subscribe to our weekly email to receive video YouTube links of the Bear Woznick radio show, as well as the Spirit of Adventure with Bear and Cindy TV show, which, by the way, is filmed in the tropics, as well as our manly evangelistic YouTube shorts. Go to schoolofmanliness.com.
the kind of man that when he gets out of bed in the morning, the devil says, "Oh no, he's up." Go to deepadventure.com and invite Bear to speak.
Aloha. I want to invite all of you mama bears out there especially. My book, 12 Rules for Manliness, continues to do very well in sales. In fact, there's been times when it'll reach number 5 on books for Christian men. But mama bears, you know it's up to you to buy these books for the men in your household, the men that you care about and love, because men just won't. A lot of men don't like to read. But what we found out is 12 Rules for Manliness. Where have all the cowboys gone? Men actually who don't like to read will read it in one weekend, and then on Monday they'll start reading it again. It's like, Jesus and Peter, both of them had very calloused hands. Jesus probably worked mostly with rock. He was a technon. He was a builder. If you've ever been to Israel, there's not a lot of trees, not a lot of wood. There's a lot of rock. And actually, there's only one house there built of wood, and that's the prime minister's house. But Jesus probably had calloused hands. Peter, we know, did. He was a fisherman. My wife's heritage is hundreds of years of fishermen back to when they were pirates. So they probably sat down and had some gritty conversations, and that's the way this book talks to men, with grit and with grace. So we ask you to consider getting the book 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? I know you can get it on the EWTN catalog. You can go into Barnes & Noble and buy it. You can buy it at our site, School of Manliness. Amazon is the modern bookstore. You can get it there too, probably at a better price than what you can get it at my website. But if you want to autograph, you can get it from me at schoolofmanliness.com. 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Basically based on men like Jason Jones, our guest today. So, Jason, you were beginning to talk story.
I made a joke one of the times I was on your show where I referred to your book as my unauthorized biography. And someone messaged me that was I got to stop joking with you.
Why? We need some inappropriateness in this life.
No.
Yeah. Why else would I have you on my show? Why else would I have
unauthorized biography,
That's such a lie because
messaged me on Facebook that I'm hearing it.
No, that's such a lie because you authorized it, didn't you?
It is my authorized. That's authorized. The authorized biography.
Yes. Hey, can you ride a horse?
The furthest thing, by the way, I'm the furthest thing from a cowboy. And I'm the most unmanly man. I couldn't build a birdhouse if I wanted. I wanted to say this about you, Bear Woznick. You're not that much older than me. I don't know. I'm born in 1971. I don't know what year you were born. But you are older than I am. And, for your man cave, I was just thinking as you were talking in the monologue how honored and grateful I am to have a friend like you that's from a different generation. And the importance of, you reflect a manliness that when I was a boy was quite normal. I was surrounded by manly men. Even if they weren't virtuous, they had a sort of dignity, a work ethic. They wouldn't have debt. They would buy the car in cash. They would drive used cars. They would have one suit. You would hear these sort of lines from all the men around me in this working class community that I was in. And it's just sort of sadly lost. And so for the man cave, I think I've been blessed in the nature of my work to have men of different generations. But as you were talking, I was wondering, who is Beer's friend and mentor that has the same difference in ages between me and you that you looked up to? And I was wondering, what was that guy like? And what virtues did that guy have? And I think that's just the wonderful thing about the man cave is it's going to give young men to really see there's a different kind of manliness in those generations before Gen Z, millennials, Gen X. I think it's important for young men to have this kind of relationship.
It was a lot like you. It was the men around me. They may not be virtuous, but they aspired to be for the most part. Yeah. They weren't. There was a scandal if you would sleep with, move in with a woman before you were married. Where you didn't hear much about babies being born out of wedlock. It wasn't. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying people. There were. I remember Jake Head and Joe Cutler at Corlitas Meat Market by Santa Cruz. They were, one of them butchered the sausage and meat, and the other one kept the grocery store running, and they ran the Padres, and they had baseball bats and baseball gloves we could go borrow and play in the sand lot, basically, and they gave money to the Cub Scouts. It was the local Padres, they were called. The group they called the Padres. They just kind of were they were a bunch of uncles that just kind of watched out for the kids. And of course, I have to say my own father, but the great Western novelist Louis L'Amour, man,
My favorite. Oh, I
Yeah,
love Louis.
I've got all 105 of his books. I used
Have
to
you,
get one of these a month.
I read them when I travel a lot because it was my
Yeah,
grandmother who was my best friend's favorite
that's
author.
yeah,
And
that's so
so
cool.
I read Louis L'Amour just to kind of think of my grandma reading Louis L'Amour. But my favorite Louis L'Amour book is his autobiography, which,
The
if you
Education of a
haven't read
Wandering
that,
Man, right?
that
Education of a
is
Wandering Man.
awesome.
Well,
Yeah,
you
James
that
Michener and Louis L'Amour's autobiographies are unbelievable.
you know what?
Everyone.
The reason why I bring it up is because, um, I used to do this a lot too. When I was a commercial banker, I would start in the West Coast and fly to the East Coast almost every Monday, and I'd pick up the most recent Louis L'Amour book in the airport. But I got to write to his wife, and
Yeah,
correspond with his son because I used so many quotes from his books in my book. And when I was reshuffling my books about 4 years ago, a book fell out of the shelf called Long Ride Home by Louis L'Amour, and I realized that's where I got the name for my TV show starring Jason Jones, Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick. But the thing about those books and those men in our lives, Jason, is it was maybe not the theological virtues always of faith, hope, and love. Although if you were American, you considered yourself a Christian.
yeah.
But it was kind of went without saying. And I remember when the tide began to swing on that. But they strove for justice, for self-mastery, for prudence, fortitude. In his books, it's very rare. You never see a man lusting after a woman in his books. In fact, they almost, there can be a love thing, and they get a tingling, or they're kind of confused, But yeah, we need men to be
When you read
men
Louis
again.
L'Amour, you feel clean.
Yes.
It's about you feel clean. Like when I read Louis L'Amour, it's as if my soul is being cleansed of the perversity and disorder that's
Mm-hmm.
hardening on you. Same thing when you read Tolkien, you feel
Yeah.
clean. And or C.S. Lewis, but Louis L'Amour has such a wholesome Americana. But I want to make sure I get this point because I don't know how much time we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very serious about this, and I've been very challenging and serious about this on media all over the world. The Christian community, first of all, in the past 2 years, it's been devastating. Priests just got kidnapped yesterday again in Nigeria, silence from the church in the West. The rise of ethno-nationalism across India and the destruction of the Christian and ancient Catholic communities that have been there since the first century because St. Thomas
St. Thomas.
went to Iran, went to India, and there have been Christian communities all the way there, all the way across since the first century. In Artsakh, a Christian community that's been there since the second century, third century, was totally ethnically cleansed last October, not this past, but the October before, by the Islamist regime in Azerbaijan. Utter silence from the church in the West. In Hong Kong and China, an absolute brutal persecution of the Catholic Church continues. In fact, 12 bishops have been banished, have been disappeared in the CCP. Silence in the West. But I think the most abysmal tragedy in the past 2 years has been Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza. I've been in two war zones in the wake of ISIS, but you will never see anything like Gaza. 90% of the buildings destroyed, 20,000 children killed, Christians eating less than 600 calories a day for 2 years, Christian women being shot by IDF snipers in church, going from the church to the bathroom, shot. 2,000-pound bombs that were paid for by the American taxpayer dropped on our churches. But because the evangelicals have been so inculcated in this absurd heresy of Christian Zionism, they will think anything that the state of Israel does is justified. So much so that I was just in the West Bank watching as settlers from around the world who come to Israel are beating up and brutalizing Christians and stealing their homes. This young woman, Alice, if you go to our website, you can see it. Her ancestors were in the upper room. They're really the descendants of the Jews that accepted Jesus. This is who the Christian Palestinians are. In one hand, they're being raped and brutalized and thrown in Hamas prisons. And in the other hand, the IDF is dropping 2,000-pound bombs on their churches. There are no human shields in those churches. There are no tunnels under those churches. And I know that's the first thing some of you wanted to hope for and think. It's just not true. And I'll bring anyone with me to Gaza, anyone with me to the West Bank, so they can see with their own eyes. So what am I saying? Does it take courage for me to stand up for the Christians in Nigeria? Not at all. Does anyone care? Not so much. India, does it take courage? A little bit, because of the power of Hindu nationalism in the United States, but not that much. But when you stand up for Christians that are being starved and slaughtered by Israel, be prepared to people to call you a liar, to call you an anti-Semite, to call you every name. And, my organization on October 7th, the first thing I did was put armed guards outside of synagogues in North Africa to protect the Jewish community. We rescued the last Jews from Afghanistan. I don't want anyone to be brutalized or punished because of their ethnicity or because of their religion. We're Catholics. We have no other. But I'm not going to be silent when my co-religionists are being starved, being shot, and being bombed. And so if you want to be a good man and stand with men that are placed in an impossible situation, raise your voice for the Christians in the West Bank, the descendants of the apostles' families. Raise your voice for the Christians in Gaza who were starved and bombed into oblivion. Every Catholic and Orthodox facility bombed. 90% of the churches, 90% of their homes bombed, and 10% of the Christians killed by the state of Israel. And you can see our evangelical brothers and sisters cheering it along and saying things like they're Amalekites, they're a curse, they should be cleansed from the land. You're talking about the descendants of the Jews that accepted Jesus. And even the Muslim Palestinians are the descendants of the Jews that accepted Jesus and the people that were in the Holy Land at that time. In the 7th century, with the Islamic influence and Dhimmi status, many Christians and Jews over time and others converted to Islam under the, yes, that's all
tyranny,
true.
the tyranny of it, yeah.
But remember, when God promised from the river to the sea was for the descendants of Abraham, and I believe that. But Abraham had two sons.
Two sons, yeah.
And I want all of them to live in peace. And I want all of them to live in peace. But most especially, and I all want them to live there. Mm-hmm. The Jews, the Christians, the Druze, the Yazidis. I want everyone to live in their home in peace. I don't want to see anyone ethnically cleansed, anyone the victim of genocide. But our Christians are afraid, so much so that what am I controversial for? Defending and advocating for the Catholics that are starving and being bombed? Going myself there to deliver trucks and aid? Risking myself? Why am I doing that? And if Tel Aviv was being bombarded the same way, I would be running, me, Bear Woznick, I'll be running trucks into Tel Aviv. Of course.
People love our EWTN TV show, Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick. Thanks to you, the show has won 4 different Tally Awards. And now, instead of waiting each week for the next episode to air, you can actually binge watch our show and even share it with your friends when you go to deepadventure.com and join the Mama Bears or the Man Cave. Along with all the other benefits, you get total access to all the seasons of our aired episodes, plus instant access to episodes that won't even air for several months. Long Ride Home with Bear Woznick, a great way to communicate the gospel in a gritty enough way that even tough men will stop and watch at deepadventure.com. Deep Adventure Ministries is grateful to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the Bear Woznick adventure on EWTN. Notre Dame Federal Credit Union provides car loans, mortgages, SBA loans, and depository accounts nationwide, as well as 24-hour support. Go to deepadventure.com to find their link, or go to NotreDameFCU.com. Mahalo to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for making the Bear Woznick adventure possible. Here is a YouTube video short, which is based on an excerpt from my newest book, 12 Rules for Manliness, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? All my heroes were cowboys. Cowboys were men who put others first, who rode for the brand, who got the job done come hell or high water. They persevered and kept fighting even when wounded. They were as dangerous as a rattlesnake or a cornered mountain lion. They were not to be taken lightly. Every man's heart comes factory loaded with a call to heroic virtue, to champion a cause that is greater than he is. And so he reaches out to a God that is greater than him too. He rides high in the saddle of his principles and his dreams. He cowboys up. announcing Spirit Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy. So many people, especially you mama bears, tell us we want more of Bear and Cindy together. Well, we're happy to announce our website, spiritofadventuretv.com, as well as our YouTube channel, Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure, where you can watch Spirit of Adventure TV with Bear and Cindy. Join us where we live in the Hawaiian Islands or where we sail our boat, the Spirit of Adventure, in the Caribbean. Experience both adventure and serenity with us as we share our life together, as well as the joy and the wisdom of our faith. Go to spiritofadventuretv.com to find out more and subscribe on YouTube to Bear Woznick Spirit of Adventure. And join us, Spirit of Adventure with Bear and Cindy.
Are you still listening? I thought we warned you to change to an easy listening station. Well, you asked for it. Here is more of the Bear Woznick Adventure.
Aloha, welcome back to the Bear Woznick Adventure. That's a very sobering conversation with Jason Jones. I'd like for you to, can you help us translate that though into our, there's what can we do about that situation, but also how do we take that into how do we deal with what's happening in our own communities where we see injustice, and what can we actually do about it? It's one thing to be a virtual signaler, justice warrior, but what can we do as men in our homes, in our churches, in the schools? I think of how many men should be running for a school board, or teaching catechism, or coaching Little League, or what do you say to the men that are listening right now?
Yeah, we should do all those things. My favorite thing is my office, believe it or not, is in an MMA gym. And I love when the head coach is gone and I get to coach the MMA class or the Muay Thai class, And I was talking to my coach the other day. I said, you have my dream job. Like, we all have different roles as men. And I would love to be the football coach. I'd love to be the defensive line coach. I spoke at a college recently and they had a defensive line coach opening. And I was like, I would love that job. I would love to mentor men in a very deep, intimate way. The nature of my apostolate, I say, is thin. We work across the world in a very thin way. We try to do the best we can. We're aspiring to rebuild every Christian home and church in Gaza. This is our goal in the next 24 months. But when your own community, we have to, as men, order our lives to serve the vulnerable in our community. And these are ways that I wish I could be more useful. I do a bit of prison ministry. I'm pretty active serving my local homeless. But there are other things I would really like to do. I would like to go things I've done in the past when I've had more time. Spend time at the old folks' home playing chess and checkers and
you can learn a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I used to do that. Go in with my guitar. Yeah.
Go with your Knights of Columbus counselor, your local apostolate, or just your children, and say, "Hey, is there a time that my family can come?" Now some families, and people will send me emails like, "I'm so admire what you do. I wish I could do what you do." And then you ask about themselves.
You can.
They have a child with autism. Well, then you find out they have a child with autism. They have a small business. They employ 15 people in their little town, and you're like, "Brother, you're doing it."
Yeah, you're doing the stuff.
You got it. You have your mother with dementia that lives in your house. You have a child with autism. Your spouse is wrestling with depression. Like, sometimes these burdens fall upon us, and that's a big burden, and that's all you can do, and that is a big deal. And those are the people I really admire.
That's the boots on the ground right there.
Those are the Rangers. When I speak at these Knights of Columbus Council, sometimes I'll tell my crazy stories about the work I do. There's always that one guy like looking at me, like, and I don't buy it. And you go to shake his hand, it's like just big, strong hand, and he's the guy doing it. We have people like that in Honolulu. I think of
a lot of our Polynesians.
A lot of our friends that are they're running Christian movie night at the parish. They're running the homeless ministry. You think of like Dallas Carter.
Love him.
Joan Punishorba's son-in-law. Oh, my brain is frozen right now. But these men I look to that they're like doing the heavy lifting. They're coaching Little League. They're doing Troops of St. George.
I think of George. He is. That's cool.
St. Bird, yeah, but I'm the Troops of St. George deadbeat dad. I mean, I actually was in the West Bank. IDF was invading. I had to walk several clicks because the roads were so blocked up. And I'm like, I'm just gonna walk. And I had my duffel bag, my rucksack, and I was walking. And I posted a picture with the road. I was on the road to Jericho, literally, and on my way to the Jordan border. But I had 30 hours to get to Texas for my son's Troops of St. George camping trip. I did not want to miss it. And I'm on the other side of the world. But then I went to the Troops of St. George camping trip, and I see all these dads that are teaching classes, that are so involved. Like, there's just order your life to serve the vulnerable. You're a young man, you have a new business, you're an insurance salesman, you're an investment banker, you're in your 20s or 30s. Like, that may be all you can do. You tithe a little bit, you pray the rosary. But as we get older, there's different. Like, I cannot wait the next 15 years to transition from the executive director of my organization to simply the president. Why? Because I want to be involved in the life of my parish. I want to play chess on Wednesday nights at the old folks' home. I want to teach Toastmasters classes at the local prison. Like, these are the things I really, really, really daydream about. And
well,
so
you have the time to do that now between 2 and 4 in the morning. You could do it. Hey,
I mean, this is what I really hope to do. It's what I would dream of doing. But, Fulton Sheen said, if you find yourself doing something and you don't have any control over it, you're in God's will. And I do feel like with my apostolate, I was kicked into a river and I'm just being swept away. And, by God's
strong
grace,
currents.
hopefully, one day God will sweep me onto the shore and I can be praying the rosary every morning with the old guys.
I know, man, but we don't do that. We don't get to do that. It's like I remember this old Charles Chaplin film where he's kind of standing by the rail track and he's just kind of leaning against this, kind of leaning like this, and the train's coming by, and he happens to grab the handle, and he's gone. He just takes off. I think it was real what happened to him too, the way they filmed in those days. I feel like when people get involved, when men really like lay down their lives like this, it's all of a sudden you're on a rocket ship, and I keep thinking, when will I have time to write more? When will I have time to spend more time reading more and stuff? But we do that all on the fly. I do my writing at the end of the day when I'm having my second round of coffee, But it's the joy of being on the front lines with the Lord. But people say, oh, I wished I was like you. I wish I could be adventurous like you are. And I go, the biggest adventure of all is to be a father. I mean, to bring an eternal being into existence, a being that's going to live forever. That's the adventure. And I think of my friend David Fortin. He's a member of the Man Cave. He has such a heart to serve God, but he has a wife that really struggles with a real severe health issue. And like, he just wrote to me just now and said, I can't be there. It's, the other day, can't be there. My wife, fell. And today he can't be there to serve with us in our meetup because it's his wife's birthday. He's putting his family first. And I think to a great extent, that's the great adventure. I want to ask you one more question. I want
to tell people we're all in adventures, Bear. G.K. Chesterton said an adventure. Well, first of all, if you list out all the inconveniences in your life, and Chesterton said an inconvenience is an adventure wrongly considered.
And what did Louis L'Amour say? What's that? An adventure is just a romantic way of saying things went wrong.
That's exactly right. And we all have different apostles for the mystical body of Christ. And I do want to say one more thing, is what we can do as Catholic men. We should never allow human beings to be, their dignity to be abused, their dignity to be undermined. We should oppose all enthusiasms of prejudice or violence, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's anti-Arab hate. So when we hear someone call Palestinians Amalekites, that is absolutely repugnant. We should stand up for them immediately and not bear the consequences.
Imago Dei, right? That's your motto.
100%. One of our schools, we just took over a school for the Dalit, the untouchables in India, and I redesigned their uniforms. And on the front of their uniform, it says mirror image of God.
Yeah. So when you look at it, when I look at it, I can't read it. But when they look at it in the mirror, is that how it's set up?
It reads right.
What does it say?
Image of God.
Image of God. Beautiful.
So when these young children who were told that they're animals, that they're subhuman by Hinduism, when they look in the mirror, they're reminded because the school uniform says they're the image of God. And so that's what we need to do. We need to stand truly with the vulnerable. You know, with the VPP, we do not proselytize.
What's the
I say
VPP? What's the VPP?
with
Vulnerable
our
People's
organization,
Project. Yeah.
vulnerablepeopleproject.com. But I know more people from most diverse religions of the world that have become Catholic through our work. And sometimes donors will say, "Do you proselytize?" I say, absolutely not. I don't think it would be appropriate for a fireman or a surgeon in the midst of pulling someone out of a building or doing a heart surgery to try to witness to them. We witness to them through our love. Now, obviously, our organization, our branding, our website, our literature, my writing, it's all super Catholic, my podcast. But with the people that we serve, whether they're Yazidis or Afghans or Palestinians, we're not proselytizing. We're serving them in their needs. Like this year for the break of Ramadan in Afghanistan, we have a really ambitious goal to give a colorful helium balloon to every child in Afghanistan. It's like kind of a big thing. It's not that expensive, but it's just to let them know in the midst of the starvation and the war and the hunger, they're remembered, they're loved. And these young kids in Afghanistan getting a helium balloon is like bigger than getting a PlayStation.
A helium balloon gives twice. Because first you get to see how cool it is, and then you get to breathe it in and talk like Donald Duck. So, or you know,
they get these balloons with the biggest smiles on their face. It's like, when we give them $1 a toy, it's the first toy they've ever had in their life.
Yeah, you know,
You give them
my
a
wife.
balloon, and it's the first toy they've ever had in their life.
My wife just sent off some gifts to two little girls who had been going through really difficult situation, drug type home, and she sent them beautiful little presents. I said, let's send them each $10, and she said no, just $1. You know, it's more precious. A single dollar. You know, she has such a good heart. We're talking with our friend Jason Jones only because you guys have said more cowbell. If you've listened to this all the way to the end, it's because Jason is our most often returning guest and has so many powerful thoughts and provocative thoughts for us to consider. But if you want to see more Jason Jones, post in the contents more cowbell. Jason, we got to go. Can we do you know how we say, may the breath of the Spirit aloha you, and we do the aloha? Can we do that together?
Yeah.
My Hawaiian brother. May the breath of the Holy Spirit aloha you. Oh, Jason just took off his hat so we can see he's not bald. May the breath of the Holy Spirit aloha you. Aloha.
Thanks for listening to the Bear Woznick Adventure. Find more manly conversation at the Bear Woznick Deep Adventure YouTube channel. Subscribe and ring the bell.